Hi everyone, this is Taylor, Executive Director of Hope for All, and I am here with Dr. Hallie Sheade, and she is going to tell us all about her organization, Steps with Horses. So, here we go. Hi, Hallie.
Hi Taylor. Hi everyone. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you Taylor so much for coming out and letting me talk about Steps with Horses today. So today we are standing in the pasture at one of our partner organizations. This is the YMCA Camp Carter Equestrian Center in River Oaks. And so the YMCA has an entire summer camp and retreat property, and then on this side of the river they have an equestrian center. And so they have been very generous in partnering with us so that we can work with their horses in our sessions, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. So like I said, they're one of our partners. Our other partner is the ranch at Windy Point in Crescent, Texas, which straddles the Hood and Parker County lines. And so what is Steps with Horses and what does STEPS stand for? So STEPS stands for something long and complicated sounding. That is Spectrum of Therapeutic Equine-Partnered Services. And so what that all is to say is that we don't just provide one type of service, we provide several to best support our clients. Which brings up the next question of what exactly do we do and who are our clients? So we provide equine-assisted therapies and activities for people with different types of mental health concerns. And that is our focus, our exclusive focus is mental health. So we work primarily with military veterans and service members, their family members, and at-risk youth, and then others in the community as well that are needing mental health care. We are licensed professional counselors. We also train graduate level interns who are wanting to get into this field to provide equine assisted counseling and psychotherapy. And so what is that? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about the terminology in the field that we have, and then how to understand the differences between what's out there. So the best way to understand this field is there's two main services. One are equine assisted therapies, one are equine assisted activities. And their goals, while similar, the focus can be opposite depending on what type of service you're looking for. So generally for the therapies, you're looking to achieve specific clinical medical change. And so for us, that's psychological change. We primarily serve people with post-traumatic stress, trauma, abuse, anxiety, depression, child behavior problems, attention problems, and other types of mental health concerns. And we accomplish that by holding our counseling and psychotherapy sessions primarily out here among the herd, rather than in an office-based setting. And so through that process, we can address those goals, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The other type of equine-assisted therapy, which is not something that we provide but is out there, is something called hippotherapy. And that's when a speech therapist, a physical therapist, or an occupational therapist uses the movement of the horse to achieve their clinical goals and functional goals for their patients. On the other side of the coin, you've got those equine-assisted activities. And those services are primarily recreational in nature, where they're geared towards people with different types of disabilities, challenges, and special needs to provide them with an enjoyable recreational activity, primarily horseback riding. That's the one you see most often, therapeutic horseback riding, by instructors who are specially trained and most of the time certified to provide riding lessons by being able to make accommodations and adaptations for people who have special needs or challenges. And so the focus there is horsemanship and riding, but even though the focus is not therapy and the providers are not necessarily therapists, there are still tremendous secondary benefits from participating in therapeutic riding. It improves quality of life, social skills, balance, muscle tone, just by learning to ride a horse in a supportive environment. And so going back to what we do, like I said, our focus is mental health. help them learn a wide variety of skills, can help them learn impulse control, can help them learn confidence by the different things they choose to do with the animal and the ways they interact with the animal. So for example, if I have a child who's really struggling with impulse control, they may initially, when they see their horse, try to go running up to the horse. Our horses that do play therapy are very well behaved, they're very well trained, and the worst they'll do is run away from the child. And so that's really good feedback for the child in that moment of, hey, my behavior affected somebody else. And the way it affected them is it made them uncomfortable or nervous. And so over time, we start to see these same children, if they, assuming they want that interaction, is they learn to catch themselves. So what that means is they're learning to be more aware of themselves, but they're also gaining empathy in that they're starting to learn, you know, the way I am affects somebody else and how to form those relationships, which then they take back to the family pet that now is suddenly coming out from under the bed, or they take it to their peers at school and are able to start making friends. The other type of counseling we do is relational equine-partnered counseling, and that's the one that primarily happens out here in the pasture. And so just like the name, it's relationship focused, and we use the term relationship pretty broadly, where it's not just, you know, somebody has a warm fuzzy relationship with their horse, which a lot of people do, but it's the idea that anytime we interact with anybody, whether that is our spouse, whether that is me and Taylor right now, whether that is me talking to somebody trying to fix my computer who is in another country, in that moment, that's a relationship. And the ways that we enter into and approach and behave in relationships, whether good or bad, tends to be pretty stable pattern of interacting, which we don't usually change unless we have need to. And so that pattern tends to follow people in the way they interact with horses. So for example, if somebody is struggling with social anxiety and they're really worried that anything they say or do might be rejected or disapproved of by somebody else, we're likely to see that come out in the way they interact with their horse, where they may be hesitant to tell the horse something they want the horse to do. So through the process of building a relationship with the horse that they've chose, and most of our clients do choose a horse that becomes their main horse, they have the opportunity to practice and try out things and see what happens. So, you know, as they're talking about wanting to tell the horse to do something, maybe they're talking about what feelings that's bringing up for them, the fears that they're having. Somebody is enjoying a nice roll.
There's some fun horse stuff happening over here.
And so, in a nutshell, they get to practice the people skills that they need to work on with the horses. But one of the most amazing things about horses is that, you know, as you can see, we feel calm out here. We feel peaceful. I'm sure just even those of you who aren't here who are seeing this, you can see the peace in this pasture. And that's one of the biggest things we hear from our clients, especially our clients who have suffered from trauma or post-traumatic stress, is it's hard to find a safe place, a place that feels comfortable. And a lot of the time when they're here, they get to feel that. And horses, being prey animals, they're so highly attuned to their environment and their surroundings that they're also highly attuned to us and noticing what we're feeling. Even to the point that a lot of the time they notice what we're feeling before we're used to feeling it ourselves, or used to noticing it in ourselves. So for our clients that are experiencing anxiety or post-traumatic stress symptoms, that can be really helpful, and the horses are able to bring it to their attention what's happening, which the sooner you find out about it, the easier it is to do something about it. But the horses can also be very comforting as well. Many times when our clients are out here, somebody is experiencing something really distressing, or if they're talking about something really distressing or traumatic, the horses will want to come over, and sometimes even we'll have several horses that might surround a client. And the client will say that because of the horse's presence, because of them being there, they feel cared about, they feel worthy, and they feel like the horses understand them, which can go a long way when they're not feeling very understood by other people. And so that's kind of how the therapy works in a nutshell. And like I said, that's our main service. But in addition to that, we noticed that when our clients were getting ready to end therapy, to terminate therapy, a lot of them didn't want to stop coming, even if they met their treatment goals and didn't technically need therapy anymore. That's because they didn't want to lose the connection with all of these beautiful animals. And so what we decided to do was we decided to launch our post-counseling services, which are equine assisted activities. And so that's when the focus shifts from meeting clinical goals to then providing that recreational supportive environment where the client can continue their connection with horses, even if a traditional riding barn may not be the best fit for what they're needing. Our instructors are able to, specially trained, to be able to make accommodations and have an understanding of what it's like for somebody who might be experiencing post-traumatic stress symptoms or anxiety or depression, to be able to teach to that and to teach to what they're needing. And so that's sort of, in a nutshell, what the entirety of our program is. And so as we're out here today, we can walk around and talk about some of these different horses and what they do, and then talk about where S.T.E.P.S is and what some of our needs are right now and how you might be able to help us from home. So as we're approaching the herd, we've got several horses out here right now, and this is only a small chunk of the herd that lives here at Equine-Partnered. As you can see, there's a variety of sizes, variety of colors, and all of these horses are unique individuals, whether it's in counseling or whether it's in riding. They have different skill sets. So over in that corner over there, we've got one of our more advanced horses, the chestnut on the right, and then one of our more beginner-oriented horses, who's the lighter colored horse on the left. And so both of these horses have worked in our program. One of them participates on a regular basis in our veterans riding class. He's gone to shows. He'll be going to the Chisholm Challenge Horse Show this year, which is a horse show for people, for therapeutic riding, people with special needs, as well as a veterans class. So if you're interested in learning more about that, that is in mid-January at the John Justin Arena in Fort Worth. And then we've got our herd leader over there, who's to the left of those guys. So he keeps the herd in line. He makes sure everybody knows he's in charge. And then we've just got some other herd members over here who are hanging out. And all of these horses offer different things in the counseling sessions. And so some of these horses, they're drawn in when a client is feeling really distraught or upset, and they'll want to come be a part of the session. Other horses will really react and have a response if a client's anxious, and they might either stay close to that client, or sometimes they'll want that client to change that state of being, and they might get really pushy, or they might start to do silly things like grabbing their coat or trying to grab their hair. And all of that is really good feedback, and not one of these horses responds exactly the same way. Just like each therapist is individual, so are these horses. And the other nice thing about that is it allows our clients to really choose a horse that they feel connected to. And so I can say just about every horse out here has been chosen by at least one client at some point, whether that's because the clients liked the way they looked. Maybe they walked up to the client and followed the client around during their first session. The horse chose them. Or maybe it's just something that they don't even have the words to describe, but they feel that connection. And so that's a really important way of helping the client to feel a sense of autonomy and a sense of control in a way that's really healthy for them in deciding that first important relationship. So, what is S.T.E.P.S doing right now, and especially around this time of the year? How might you be able to help? Well, our services are in very, very high demand. Our waiting list tends to hover around 50 people. Right now, at this time of the year, we're up to almost 70. And some of that is scheduling. We tend to stay full and stay busy. But some of it is our clients have trouble accessing our services for financial limitations. And so we apply for grants, we get donations, we have some active grants for military right now, but the majority of the time the funds that we have aren't enough to serve the demand, and so we're always needing more. And so our goal this holiday season is to raise $75,000 between now and the end of the year in order to provide more services to more people and help get some of these people off the waiting list to be able to access services. And so, there's a lot of challenges, obviously, in being a nonprofit. And one of our biggest challenges, and this isn't, something people generally like to talk about, but all nonprofits struggle with it, is operating costs. And so we have our direct services, which we get funding for, which we're always needing more for, but we're also needing operating cost assistance. In our field, to be able to do this job, to be a therapist to do this job, it's not like you can just go and pick somebody off the street. They need to have a tremendous amount of experience in different fields. So they need to be obviously a licensed therapist, but they also need to have equine experience. They need to have training in animal-assisted therapy, and that's a big ask to find really strong candidates, really high-quality therapists. And so where that leaves us, though, is in your typical private practice. Let's say if your client doesn't come, either the therapist doesn't get paid for that hour, or depending on the clientele you're working with, then the client may get charged either way. With our clients and the people that we're most interested in serving, that's not an option. Again, going back to our military veterans and our at-risk youth, most of the time they're not the ones paying for their services in the first place. And so part of the challenges that we face is being able to maintain high quality staff and keep them happy and satisfied, and have a way to compensate them for their very valuable time when the costs that are being of a website, stepswithhorses.org, where you can learn more about us, you can learn more about our history, some of our numbers on effectiveness and how many people we've served, all of that sort of thing. And so if you go to S.T.E.P.'s website, we have a donation page there as well. The nice thing about donating through the website is if you would rather make, let's say, a monthly donation or a quarterly donation, you're able to set that up through the website to donate on to have a donation automatically made on a regular basis without even having to think about it.
Great. And tell us a little bit more about you and your connection to horses. And you did some really interesting doctoral research at UNT. So give us a little bit of that information.
Yeah. So I grew up riding horses, and I did not grow up on a ranch. I actually grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, which is not exactly horse country. So when I was really young, about 2 years old, my parents took me somewhere with my playgroup for pony rides. But the horses were attached to a hot walker, which is a big metal contraption, and parents weren't allowed to go with. I don't remember this, but apparently I was the only kid in my playgroup who would go on the horse. So fast forward a few years later, we were moving from one city to another, and my parents were concerned about how I would adjust to the move. But they noticed there was a riding stable down the road. And so to sweeten the deal, they said, well, we're gonna move, but you can start taking horseback riding lessons. I think that was probably the best and the worst decision my parents ever made. Because after that, I never wanted to not be with horses, and I wanted to live at the barn. And so I grew up taking English hunter jumper lessons at different barns outside Chicago. And as I got older, I started, my parents would drop me off at the barn, either during the summer, at the beginning of the day, or on the weekends, and pick me up at the end. I'd spend the entire day grooming horses, helping my trainer prepare for lessons, doing whatever odd job she had for me, just to be able to ride at the end of the day. And so I learned a lot from those experiences, but I also got to have a lot of one-on-one time with certain horses. And so one horse in particular that I felt really drawn to was a paint horse named Cowman. And to this day, I can't tell you what it was about him, but I just felt a connection with him. He didn't have the best reputation among the horses or among the people, but all I wanted to do was just sit in his stall and brush him and talk to him. And that really triggered an interest for me in understanding the human-animal relationship. My dad would tell stories about how he remembers seeing me try to leave the stall in Cowman, grabbing my t-shirt and pulling me back in. And so he would talk about too that he was really fascinated and interested in seeing how this relationship was happening and playing out. So fast forward a few years later, I went to school at the University of Miami down in Florida specifically to study animal behavior because I wanted to know more about this. I competed on the Miami equestrian team, and I trained horses for the S.P.C.A down there. And those experiences continued to grow my interest and help me hone what it was I really wanted to focus on. So after I graduated from Miami, I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where I started volunteering and then later becoming a therapeutic riding instructor. And I taught riding lessons for people with different types of disabilities and challenges. And as I took that year, first year after graduating, to figure out what I wanted to do, I learned about this field, Equine Assisted counseling. And so I decided that's it. That's what I want to do. That's where I get to help other people experience that relationship that I felt as a kid with horses in a way that can help them to really promote healing and positive mental health. And so I entered into Georgia State University in Atlanta. I got my master's in counseling really start doing this work, equine assisted counseling, primarily working with military, which then led to my dissertation, which was the big research project in order to graduate, where I studied the effectiveness of equine assisted counseling on reducing post-traumatic stress for military veterans, and we found there to be a lot of benefits to doing so. From them feeling more supported, to learning to manage some of the physiological symptoms of post-traumatic stress, and just being able to have a safe place to process their trauma. So while I was doing my dissertation, is when I launched off on my own and started a practice doing this kind of work. And from there, that grew and grew and grew to then we established S.T.E.P.S, because we really saw, in the past we partnered with nonprofits to hold donations for us and to partner on grants, but we formed S.T.E.P.S almost 3 years ago because we felt ready to really launch and go off on our own, get our own grants, get our own donations, and really serve the people that we wanted to serve. So.
Great. Thank you for sharing some of that. So when you think of, you said that all of the horses had different personalities, like the people. How much of your work with people is grooming the horses and coming out here? How is a horse chosen? I know you've told me before that you kind of do what we're doing now and just come to the pasture and hang out. So how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. What does a session look like? So different sessions can obviously look different. We don't take a one-size-fits-all approach, but generally speaking, when most people have a session, they come out to the pasture, and we just tell them that the rest of their time is for getting to know us, getting to know the horses, and the horses getting to know them. And so most of the clients will walk around the pasture and meet different horses. A lot of the time, the horses will also come up to the clients and introduce themselves. And by the end of the session, a lot of our clients have an idea of who they want to work with. And so from there, the clients, assuming they've chosen a horse, and some people take longer than others, some people just choose to work with the herd as a whole, and the herd just sort of becomes their cast of therapists, co-therapists, animal co-therapists. But a lot of our clients get really excited about coming to see their horse every week. And so typically in the beginning, it's about building that relationship between the client and the horse in ways that they can get to know each other better, whether that is grooming the horse and noticing how the horse responds to different ways that they groom, noticing how they feel when they're grooming the horse, different brushes, things that come up. Being around horses in general can be a very emotional experience for a lot of people, and so we want to create the space for those emotions not only to come to the surface, but to feel safe to acknowledge them. And so for some of our clients with trauma, you know, when I've worked at other places, and there have been people at the center but not directly involved in our sessions, the joke has been that we're out here doing voodoo, because it looks like we're not always doing a whole lot, but a whole lot is happening in our sessions. And so we have some clients that will come out and talk a lot about what's going on, or things that have gone on, such as their trauma. And when we talk about that in the presence of their horse, that can feel very comforting, very soothing. It gives them a safe place to go back to, a way to stay grounded. So if somebody starts talking about their trauma and starts to become overwhelmed, they have their horse right there, and they can bring themselves back to the present and feel confident being able to come back to the present. But a lot of the time the horses will respond as they're talking, and so a horse may start to lean into a client, or
We're getting a friend over here.
looks like Daisy's coming to investigate.
Hi. You gonna come help us out?
You have something to say? Something to add, Daisy?
That's so funny because it's like she heard you saying, and sometimes the horses just come up to you, and here she is.
And she's one that is very discerning when she comes up. She doesn't approach a lot, but with the clients that she approaches the most with, it's usually when they are in fact talking about something that's very upsetting or traumatic. And Daisy will just come and stand by them, and then start to move into them, maybe even, have them come and hand on her, and that can be very comforting.
This is funny because we have typical horse behavior. Now this one's getting closer. We did get a question come in. Daisy, I'm going to come pet you while we keep talking if you need some pets. We had a question come in on Facebook. Is Dr. Chandler still working with your organization, or is she working with S.T.E.P.S for horses at all?
Dr. Chandler is in an advisory role.
Okay.
So she's not a full board member, but she is on our advisory board.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Is there, Debbie, do you have a follow-up to that question? Feel free to type it in. That is Debbie Reynolds, who is actually my mom, and she did her counseling work at UNT. So
okay.
she might know
Hi,
Dr.
Debbie.
Chandler. I don't know how long Dr. Chandler has been there. Oh, she says she is the best.
Yes, Dr. Chandler is the best. So if you are looking to get a degree in counseling and want to do animal assisted therapy, you should go to UNT and study with Dr. Chandler.
Maybe I'll go back and get another one.
So yeah, but you just saw it in action, how the horses will come up, they'll join the session, they'll approach, and it's hard to say exactly, what triggers that in them. We don't know exactly what the horses are able to notice, but there's been more and more research coming out, especially in this last decade, specifically the last 5 years, showing that horses can read human facial expressions and tell the difference between a positive one and a negative one, and that they react differently. There are studies showing that horses and human changes in heart rate will sync up. So if somebody is feeling calm and their heart rate starts to change, the horses, obviously they don't have the same heart rate, but will also change to indicate that they're both starting to move. There's been seminal research that came out, and this is on dogs, but I would suspect that it would probably come out the same on horses, or at least fairly similar as well, that petting a dog releases oxytocin in the person, which is a social bonding, social connection hormone, but it also releases it in the dog. And so again, with the way that the horses choose to join our sessions and seeing the changes in the horses during the sessions, I can infer that a lot of the time this is doing as much good for them as it is for us. And in fact, from both facilities that we work at, there have been a few horses and donkeys that the facilities have really seen a positive change in since we started doing this work. So for example here, and he's way up at the other pasture, but they have a donkey named Spot. And Spot had been very standoffish, very distrustful of people. But when we started working out here and being in the pasture like this, he slowly started approaching, he slowly started getting more interested, and he started getting some of his own clients. One day, one of these clients decided to take him for a walk, which, according to the staff here, was almost unheard of with Spot. In fact, when they saw this client walking Spot from a distance, they thought Spot was loose because Spot was not very cooperative, being haltered and led, but he went like a puppy dog wherever this client wanted to go. And so since then, they've told me they've really seen a positive change in Spot, and as well as in some of their other horses out here that maybe had been difficult to halter if somebody came out to the pasture to get them. Now that's not as much of an issue.
You have a donkey at the Crescent location too.
Yes.
Who, he kind of did the same thing,
Yeah.
didn't he?
He has a very similar story to Spot, where that particular donkey hadn't been handled a whole lot before the current owners took over that property. He came with the property. It was very standoffish, very shy. You couldn't even walk in his direction. Now he is pretty much the pasture greeter, where he comes up to the majority of clients at least some point during their session. He wants to be involved in the session, and he has more clients than any of the horses do.
Who's this donkey?
That over there is Tallulah.
Tallulah. That's cute.
And she is a very, very anxious donkey. She still is very, very difficult to approach, but she's getting better. And so more recently, we've actually had people be able to approach her out here, which has taken a really long time for her to get comfortable with. But it also, a donkey like Tallulah can really help the clients in the sense that they feel like they're not alone. If they can see in Tallulah the same things that they're struggling with, it helps them to feel that they're not on their own with it and that others experience it as well. But for other clients, it can help them to learn empathy, to learn to understand somebody else, and to learn to pay attention to their behavior. So if you're going to get close to Tallulah, you have to be very present, very in the moment, and very aware of what you're doing, but also very aware of how she's responding. And so that can be really helpful, especially for some of our kids.
Well, this is just such impactful, important work you're doing, and I appreciate you letting us come and hang out with you today. And Steps with Horses was actually our very first application to come in at Hope for All, as we're looking for people to support. So I am pleased to tell you today we are gifting $5,000 to Steps with Horses. So hopefully that will help you get closer to your holiday campaign.
Yes.
And we'll make
Definitely.
sure we post all of the ways that people can connect with you. We'll get it on Facebook, and then we'll get a blog post out in the next couple of days. So it's wonderful work. We love it. I hope some of you watching will connect with Steps with Horses and help Dr. Sheade continue this important work. So thank you, Hallie.
Thank you.
And listeners, if you have an organization you think we should highlight on Awareness Wednesday, you can email me at taylor@hopeforall.org, and we'll get them up here as well. So everyone, enjoy your cold day here in Texas, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Bye.